and we're moving into our second conversation for today as we start to talk about fire management in Belize. It's a little bit damp outside, so people aren't thinking about forest fires right now, but that's the point. It's about learning before the fire season starts, right? Yes. With us on set to share this information, we have Muschamp, who is the terrestrial manager and fire expert at TIDE, the Toledo Institute for Development and Environment, and Raul Chun, who is the forest officer with the forest department. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start off by talking about the fire season itself and what happens in preparation for it.
Okay, well, good morning and thanks for having us here on set and for sharing some information about fire management. Well, for the forest department, the fire season actually starts on February 15th and ends June 15th.
Yeah.
However, as climate change progresses, we're starting to see that the dry season may extend beyond June 15th, as was the case in 2019, as was the case in 2017. So in preparation for that, the Forest Department and TIDE, who operates in the south, that deals or has a portfolio for fire management, basically goes on in terms of raising awareness and also carrying out prescribed burns and stuff like that to kind of like reduce the threats of wildland fires.
On average, how many fires do we see a year?
We don't really necessarily have that number, but on average, we estimate anywhere between 93,000 to 94,000 acres of land actually burning annually.
Is it that we're trying to prevent these fires from occurring, or is it that we're trying to manage as best as possible? I ask because I am of the understanding that fires in a sense are necessary for regrowth and what have you. So where is the mandate?
Well, actually the wildfires are actually bad.
Okay.
It's costly, it's damaging to ecosystems, particularly the broadleaf species, because these species are not adapted to fire. In terms of pine forests, pine forest basically requires fires, but again, if you have repeated, aggressive, intensive fires, it's damaging to the forest composition, to the dynamics of forests. So what we try to do basically is to install or implement what we call prescribed burns. Basically, reducing forest fuel loads and improving the aesthetics and the environment, giving the pine species or the pine saplings basically optimum conditions for growth.
Yeah. Now we have to put this into perspective too, because you said 2019 was different, and it was. We saw an extensive drought, especially in the north of the country. And so far, the predictions are that this year we will be seeing similar dry weather, which means it'll be extended and we don't get the rain we should. But also, if we look at what's happening around the world, everybody's talking about the Australian fire now just because of the size of it. But you've had the Amazon, you've had California fires. We've seen around the world where wildfires have been to the point of uncontrollable with devastating consequences. So that means for us in Little Belize, where we do get fires as well, we got to think preventative, right?
Yes.
Is that what's happening?
I wouldn't say thinking, we'd have to think preventative in some instances, but we really have to understand that some of our ecosystem actually needs fire. The important thing is how, when, and where fire is used. Right? So if we get fires during the hottest, driest time of the year, then we are getting those destructive fires. In fire management, we say fire has two faces.
Okay.
It has a good face and a bad face. You see those faces depending on how, when, and where it's used.
Okay.
Right? And in the case of our pine savannas in Belize, we are getting too much fires. We are seeing our savannas burning every year. And that's impacting pine regeneration. It's impacting some of our endangered species. So if we do not address it, then we'll be losing a lot of what we have.
I think the core problem for Belize is that we have an abundant, unwanted, uncontrolled fires that basically affects human health, the environment, and properties. And the concern really basically comes when you have fire and humans basically conflicting.
From a terrestrial point of view, Mario, what is the scope of the areas under tide's responsibility?
Okay, in terms of tide, we work in an area known as the Maya Mountain Marine Corridor. So it's that stretch of land from the foothills of the Maya Mountain to the coastline between the Monk River watershed and the Rio Grande watershed. So it's approximately 1 million acres.
Wow.
But it's not tide alone. We have a lot of partners in there. And so how we were able to address fire within that is the formation of a Southern Belize Fire Working Group, which is something that Raul will talk about as we move ahead during today's show. It's the only fire working group active in this country right now, and we have been able to address a lot of issues as it relates to fire within that corridor. So suppressing fires where we don't want fire, and using fire as a tool where fire is needed.
So here's an interesting fact that I saw in your presentation. So we see these wildfires far off from where we're driving or where we live, and we think, oh, it must be Mother Nature that created it. But you're saying the majority of these wildfires start by being intentionally set.
They are human start fires.
Human-induced.
There are naturally caused fires from lightning, but the occurrence of that is not like we're seeing fires in Belize. As in where I've been working for the past 21 years, I've seen only 4 lightning strike fires in 21 years.
Wow.
So that tells you is like every 4 or 5 years you would get a lightning strike fires or naturally caused fires within these areas. And that's the kind of fire, what we call fire regime, that we'd like to bring back to these areas, because that's the kind of fire that really promotes regeneration and really take care of the forest.
But 1 million acres of land is a vast expanse, right? That's beyond the eye can see or the mind can imagine. Are there enough resources in terms of the organizations working together or the wherewithal necessary to be able to cover 1 million acres of land?
Hence the reason for the working group. When we looked at fire management, for example, because Tide we only co-manage 2 of those protected areas within that corridor, the terrestrial. We have the Yashe Conservation Trust, which manages other areas, and then we have long-term forest licensees, like that works in that area, that are also responsible for fire. So together, we work to address these things. And what we have done is, over the years, we realized that even just us alone, as those groups can't, we had to bring in communities. So we had to get community members trained so that they are able to deal with fires and fires that surrounds their communities. And most of these communities are farmers, so they actually use fire to clear land and so on. And a lot of the fires we were seeing were escape from these burns, these agricultural burns that we were seeing.
Escape as in the fire spread further than they
wanted to. And so we had to address that by actually teaching these farmers how to do it properly. And so for the past 2 years, we can say that within the Maya Mountain Marine Corridor, there were no escape fires from agricultural burns because of the work that we have been doing with farmers.
The thing is, like we said earlier, the fires are human-induced. And why? Because of land cover change, or land use change, sorry. And so the more and more people getting into these forested areas for community development, you see people basically not being aware of the threats of fire to property and life. And so they're not also aware in terms of the proper use of fire, because there are benefits, but then there are consequences. And if you're not aware of the consequences, then basically you not only put yourself at risk, but also other people, and especially those the people that actually are vulnerable in terms of respiratory diseases and heart conditions. Smoke basically affect these people.
Of course,
the concern really for us is that the amount of fires and the threat it poses to.
So how do you go about ensuring that as many people as possible learn proper fire management? Because I think I recall from previous conversations, it's securing your area, having enough parameter between your
breaks.
farm, fire breaks, your words, right? But even paying attention to the wind pattern for that day, the weather. How do you make sure? Because if I, move to a farm in a forested area, I create a farm, I may never have that information. I just know what used to be done, what I've seen other people do, and perhaps has always worked for me, but with climate change, things are different.
Well, the thing is, we're kind of like trying to get more organized. Initially, we would normally just go on how to say, like raising awareness. But now, for 2019, we started or actually established a national fire working group where we have government agencies and NGO representation making up the membership of this national fire working group. So what we intend to do really is to get coordinated and do proper planning. Well, one, to continue with public awareness. Two, to really move towards proper fire management. All this thing about prescribed burns and fire management planning and so on. Those are the things that we want really to work on. But the thing is, we need to get into communities. We need to get into schools. We need to get into institutions, government institutions, for example, like the Ministry of Agriculture needs really to step up in terms of their responsibility as it comes to agricultural fires. The Forest Department basically looks at forest fires or wildland fires more, but in terms of of our protected areas.
How do you synchronize? Because what I hear from you is that very often it's an agricultural fire that may spread to become a forest fire. So how do you work together with the Ministry of Agriculture?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we're trying now to bring them in. Well, they form part of the National Wildland Fire Working Group. So we can now hopefully use this platform to work together and to basically try to get our people trained. Tide basically has a very good program in the south. Tide basically is the chair of the Southern Belize Fire Working Group that has trained communities in terms of fire management, use of fires properly. So we want to basically replicate that in other districts. And really, we are working towards that in terms of the north, the central zone, and probably a subgroup in the Mountain Parish Forest Reserve area.
Well, Mario, sorry. Go ahead. What's your experience with working in these communities? You said last year there was no breakaway fires. In other words, the fires that were set were contained. And that was in one of the driest times we've had in a long time. So that shows things are working.
Well, what happened is, in the past, these fires would escape from these farmers and destroy other farmers' crops. And so they would have to compensate that farmer for his crop. And it happened to a couple of people, and then those folks, knowing that Tide we were responsible and dealing with fires in our area, they approached the Southern Belize Fire Working Group to assist with building that capacity so that these things don't happen again. Because then now you have to take money out of your pocket to pay for that damage. And so the communities actually came looking for this kind of training, which was what we wanted in the first place.
Because there was a financial implication.
Yes, we didn't want to really bring it to them and we wanted it to come from them. And then we provide the training. And now we are seeing the benefits from those trainings. Like Raul said, the Southern Belize Fire Working Group has been operating for the past 12 years. And we have addressed fires in that area by eliminating, I would say when we first looked at it, we were getting maybe 25 fires per year, wildfires. We are down to now maybe 1-2 wildfires per year in that time. So we have cut down the incidence of wildfires there drastically. So what we are seeing
this
now
is largely
more
this is largely the result of what we call slash and burn practices.
Yes. Yeah. So the slash and burn farm practices is what is really was causing a lot of the escape fires from happening.
So it's working in the south. So we think that
Yeah.
we can try to replicate this.
What are the key changes that you teach them so that their fire doesn't get uncontrollable?
Well, one of the first thing is the laws of this country. Because
So
there
it's
are
a good
laws.
place to
there
start.
are laws
Yeah.
that relates to fires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you broke those laws and, for example, damage, so you are you can be
Liable.
taken to court and
Okay.
be fined and all of that stuff. So that was one of the main thing that was one of the things we started with. And then we started to say, look, people has been using fires for a long time,
Yeah.
and it will never stop them from using fire.
Yeah.
So how can we help them to use it safely and properly so that we lessen the chance of escaping and burning what they don't want to burn? And so we worked with them to address that. So focusing on the weather conditions, because most of the farmers in the past wanted to get the hottest time to burn because they want to consume everything. And really and truly, that's bad, because when you burn everything, then you are also taking out a lot of the nutrients that the ash would provide. So you don't want to burn when it's too hot and too dry, because then you're losing some of the nutrients that can come back into that soil to improve your crop, your yield from your crop. And so we tell them, look, you don't have to wait until it's too dry. It's how you're using techniques to put fire in the ground to achieve what you want to achieve.
Okay.
Right? And so the past couple of years, we help them burn during conditions when it's not too dry. And what they're seeing from that is that they get better yield from their crops. So more and more people are changing from burning in the hottest time of the day and finding that the right time to burn.
Okay.
So
So it is a
using-
change of mindset.
It's a change of mindset, yes.
And also putting in other techniques
Yes,
as well.
because fire has to do with science and an art. Right? Because you have to understand fire behavior and the impacts of fire, and that's the science part. The art is how you put it on the ground to achieve your objectives.
If you are to replicate this same exact thing elsewhere in the country, I would want to think that you would have to consider other factors, right? Like, for instance, the topography
Yes.
in the north is different than in the south.
Yeah.
Perhaps the kind of soil or soil composition is also
Yeah.
different as well.
Everything is different. The
the
north
people,
gets a lot less rain than the south,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
everything is different.
The people or the institutions working in the districts, in the other districts, are different as well. And the thing is, what works, I think, for the Southern Belize Fire Working Group is the affinity.
Yeah.
The people making up, or the institution makes up that group, basically have common interests,
Yeah.
and so they work together easier. So we have to try to find those institutions or organizations in other districts to see who have the common interest in terms of fire management, so that we can bring those people together and try to work with them. The thing is that we're using Mr. Muschamp as a mentor,
Yeah.
basically taking him along to make presentations like this, or basically talk of his experience in other areas, so that we can kind of like persuade them.
What area is the most challenging when it comes to wildfires?
I believe in the north.
In the north?
Yeah.
Why?
A lot of private properties, and the Mennonite communities basically just are more engaged in land clearing and stuff like that. So, and they are basically a closed community, and so it's we're seeing a bit of challenge, I think, in getting really to. It will take a longer time.
Yeah.
Because right now we're
Because they use the burning. They
use
do
it, yes.
create their own fires.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I'm trying to think, looking at the global perspective and knowing the devastation that's been caused by wildfires. I mean, we talk about the fires getting out of control and the resources it takes, but people have lost homes, they've lost their life, In Australia, for example, I think the statistic is well known now, 500 million animals have died in that fire. Some are quite possibly going to be extinct after this, and even special species of plants. So if I think in Belize, where we are facing unprecedented dryness, you know, your fire season is going beyond what it normally does. We have to be on the ball. Like, we have to make sure we're not going to do anything to ruin or lose all the beauty that we love and try to protect here. So how do you capitalize? How do you take these examples and bring agriculture to the table, bring the farmers from the Mennonite community to the table and say, look at what's happening out there. We cannot afford to have that happen here.
Basically, it will take one-on-one conversations with them. Actually, we're trying to work with an organization out of Corozal to basically try to reach out to they have good working relationships with them, so we're using that advantage somewhat. And so, so that would probably be one of our strategies. Again, the community consultations, public awareness, again. I don't know, Mario.
Yeah, it will require a lot of public awareness. But for that, it's not our issue, because that's why we had developed the National Wildland Fire Communication Strategy,
Exactly.
which the department should pick up and start using to sensitize the public on fires and the issues of fires and fire management. And then we have the National Wildland Fire Management Policy and Strategy, which also needs to get implemented for us to really put a handle on this thing. And I'm hoping that the department can really push Cabinet to really get these things approved and we start using them, because they were not just developed to
sit on a shelf.
Exactly.
We put a lot of time and effort into developing these things to address what we're seeing, and if they're going to be put on a shelf, then we wasted our time.
Exactly.
So we need
and the thing is, we have
impress-
funding right now to actually start implementing some of the strategies that are detailed within the wildland fire policy and strategy, and also within the communication strategy for fire. So we couldn't say this 10 years ago, but now we can say this, and hopefully it's opportune that we can do all this given the weather conditions or the expectations that we may have a very intense fire season this year.
So, other than being able to try to get people to properly manage their fire, what's been happening in terms of the response side? Who responds to a wildland fire that gets out of control?
Well, at this time, like for brush fires and bushfires around communities, the Belize National Fire Service actually are the ones that are called to address these fires. When it comes to fires in our protected areas, we normally would address those ones. Our efforts in terms of the Forest Department during the dry season basically lies with the Mountain Pine Ridge Forest Reserve. Why? Because then that area is basically managed for sustainable forest management. The terrain is very rugged. We need more of our efforts there, and so our staff basically are placed or on fire duties during the dry season. So in terms of like covering the entire country, the Forest Department
do we
is
have
not
a plan
really
though? I mean, in the event that one fire gets out of, there's no response plan?
There's no response plan really. The thing is, yes, there is. But the thing is, the actors are not organized, so it's
like working in your own area.
We have
I could recall 5 or 6 years ago, perhaps 7 would be a stretch, where the Mountain Pine Ridge was on fire for a very long period of time.
2017.
Yeah, and the response to the fire I would say was pretty challenging for everyone involved.
Yes.
Because in my opinion here, it seemed to have been addressed a little too late. The response time, a lot had already happened, and so attempting to bring it under control proved difficult for the responders. Now you're saying that while yes, there is a strategy or a plan in place, but those who are responsible to execute the plan may not be as organized as they ought to be, then that adds a totally different or new dimension to what the existing challenges are.
And that's the reason we're now moving into national coordination, so that it doesn't, hopefully it doesn't repeat. So we have the National Wildland Fire Working Group now. We have Southern Belize Fire Working Group. The intention really is to expand that network, and that is part of the plan. And then from there, the finer management plans for the different sites or landscape level plans will come into being, and then hopefully it can be handled with a bit more effectiveness. What caught us, I think, in 2017 was that the Forest Department was the only one basically working towards suppressing that fire. So people get tired. I mean, it's a very arduous and tedious task. So it really placed a lot of pressure on the department.
Well, we hope that in addition to looking at improving management throughout the country, you do work on that national response as well. We don't, and we're in the city especially, we don't think about it as often as I know perhaps other communities do. But it is a very critical issue, and as you said, the fire season actually starts in a month's time. And while you can't say with certainty, it's very likely to go beyond what is usually the fire season in June, since we are predicted for another drought.
The meteorological department basically is predicting a dry spell until, I think, May 2020, and that is right within our fire season. So and it can even go beyond. So thing is, we can only ask people to basically be responsible in terms of when they're burning areas for milpas or for farming, when they're burning garbage. These things are especially when you burn on a windy day, the embers can easily pick up and really start another fire. And you can easily,
I can
especially
never
in the
understand that one. I mean, it's just logic. If it's windy, why would you light a fire?
And so those are the things that we try to teach to improve fire management, using the weather to your advantage. You don't want to be burning in the hottest, windiest, driest time, because then that's a recipe for disaster. So we try to, like for us in the south, most of our prescribed burns we try to do when it's still a bit wet. So you get a lot cooler burn, you lessen the chance of escaping occurring, and less work for you, the guys who are working these fires.
And it is, and if the dry spell continues, the drought continues, even broadleaf forests can actually burn. So all those areas, the Chiquibul National Park and the Chiquibul Forest Reserves, and all the other protected areas southwards, I mean, if it gets dry enough, below, I believe, 45% relative humidity, anything can actually, spark.
Because the fuel load goes up at that point, right?
But the thing is, it's loaded with fuel right now, because it hasn't seen, I think the last time that area actually burnt was after the passing of Hurricane Hattie or something like that. So the leaf litter and all that basically is there. If it gets dry enough, the same thing that happened in Brazil, the same thing that happened in Australia, can easily happen here in Belize, right? And the thing is, our personnels are not may not be enough, and may not be wide-ranging enough to really respond to these fires. So.
Well,
so we have to build capacity at the national level to really address these fires.
So
that's where my role comes into play.
So we're also doing the same. Actually, tomorrow we start with a 4 days training in fire management at the Mountain Pine Ridge Forest Reserve.
Nice.
Basically exposing our people along with other institutions, including resort owners from around the Mountain Pine Ridge area, to basically the techniques and precautions that they should take.
Well, gentlemen, we do appreciate you coming in. I think that one of the things that is inspiring is that you are looking as much as possible at prevention of any possible problem as the weather patterns continue to change, as we continue to see devastation from the very same issue in other parts of the world. We want to know that we are at least thinking ahead to prevent and possibly address anything like that. So thank you very much.
Okay.
And to get in touch with you about the training, where do they contact?
Well, for now, we've filled up the spaces, but the thing is, if there's any institution that wants us to deliver a training for them, you can contact us at 822-1524, the Forest Department office in Mopan, or my cell number is 614-2850. Mario also.
In the case of us at Tide, we do have a sort of a consultant team that we use to do fire management work. So
you can be hired
we
to
do training, we do fire management plans development, all that stuff.
Okay.
And for me, you can reach me at the Tide office at 722-2274 or 2431. My cell number is 671-6568, or you can email me at muschamp@tidebelize.org.
All right.
Perfect.
Well, thank you very much for coming in, gentlemen.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back in a few. Stay tuned.